So my guest on this episode of the Neil Wilkins podcast is Daniel Goddard. Now, Daniel is and has a background in entertainment, in digital marketing, in AI networking, a whole host of other things as well in terms of his journey. And he will be offering valuable insights for us because as a former soap star turned tech entrepreneur, Daniel is able to go deep into all things personal and professional development. So if you're striving to break into entertainment, maybe, but to build a successful personal brand, almost certainly if you're in business, and even to start your own business or master the art of networking, then you are in the right place. Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Neil, pleasure. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Hey, everybody.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff to unpick here. There's a lot of a journey to uncover and to share with everybody. Where should we start? Do you want to do a little bit of a backstory? Is that the best?
Yeah, sure. I think life ended up imitating art for me. I think I became an actor because I couldn't determine one thing in life I wanted to do. I went to university in Sydney to study business. Particularly, I was going to get into stockbroking and merchant banking. But along the way, I kind of decided that just being stuck in one particular sort of little niche was going to not really fulfill me as a person. So I thought acting would give me an opportunity to play multiple things. I could play a banker. I could play different roles. So ultimately, you could have many occupations as one. So I began my journey. I started actually on a soap in Australia called Home and Away. I finished Home and Away, and then I went traveling. I ended up in the US. I ended up with a show called Beastmaster, which I had a pet tiger, eagle, and ferret. So I ran around in a loincloth, and this is in the late 90s. And then I ended up on a soap opera in the US called Young and the Restless, where I did 1,100 episodes. So I was there for like almost 15 years. That came to an end, and then I kind of bundled up all the lessons I'd learned in personal branding, from branding and marketing myself as a soap actor and as a sort of TV actor, into a marketing company. And then that has been running there for a couple of years. And then simultaneously, I then launched another company, which is called Disco. It's an AI matching networking company, which ironically stemmed from a lot of personal appearances that I would do as a soap opera actor, where I'd meet a lot of fans at different conventions. And I started to realize that people are all on this journey of trying to match with each other and form relationships, and everyone in their own way is their own personal brand. Now more than ever, in the past, you would find people were just still, Neil Wilkins or Daniel Goddard. And then eventually, with the power of social media and the power of the internet, people started to realize they could take their brand, they could attempt to, expand it in a direction they wanted to take it, and then monetize it. So I think that for me, it's been a journey of steps that have sequentially led to this place. I think it's a journey for me that makes a lot of sense. Because now more than ever, I'm allowed to be the entrepreneur I've always wanted to be. Even as an actor, I was an entrepreneur. So you become a person at one part of your journey of life, and then along the way, as long as you're aware of life taking you in different directions, and you go on that ride and you accept it, you can flourish. I think what happens is with a lot of people is they end up in this position where it's like, I'm doing something right now I don't want to be doing, or this is a grind, or I wish I was over here, but I'm over here. And they disconnect from the way that the nature and time and just there's a sequence of experiences that will always take you to where you have to end up. So I think for me, I'm where I am now, basically, because this is what I was meant to be doing. Just as I'm almost having this conversation with you right now, this is something we need to discuss. It all comes back to personal branding and how you decide to brand yourself and monetize your brand. And there's so many platforms out there now to do that. But the question is, are you doing it right, or are you doing it wrong?
And that's a fundamental question, isn't it? And I think there'll be one that we'll unpick in this conversation. But I'm curious because obviously going through the acting route, which, for a lot of people is going to be, fascinating to understand how that's really I guess helped you shape the personal brand, or the Daniel Goddard who is today, as a
Right.
very kind of well-rounded, there's a business person here, there's somebody who can express, there's somebody who's obviously a multifaceted communicator in the broadest kind of sense of it. Is it personal branding isn't really something then that you can just literally switch on? You can't just decide, right, that's going to be my personal brand. Okay, I switch it on. That's now who I am. It feels like there's almost a journey of discovery, and you have to take the time and the attention to really figure it out en route. I mean, that feels a more natural way of doing it. Was that kind of how it was for you?
Yes, it's exactly how it is, because you can't say I'm going to be this, I'm going to be that, because you let me rephrase it. You can say it, but whether or not you have the skill set to apply it, or the tenacity to endure the journey in order to hopefully achieve it, they're two separate things. And I think what happens is that you can decide, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to be. Whether you want to be an actor, a painter, a plumber, it doesn't matter. Everyone that you hire who's a tradesman has a brand. Why are you hiring that tradesman over the other tradesman? Is it because they're cheaper? Is it because the word of mouth came from, like, your best friend who said they're great, they turn up on time, they didn't steal the jewelry when I had to go outside and do something, I left them in the bathroom, you know what I mean? So it all comes down to building a trust factor with a base that would want to have the product that or the skill set that you wish to market. And that really, at the nutshell, is at the nutshell of everything, because you see so many brands pop up now on the internet, especially now that everyone can get a Shopify store, and the next thing you know, they're selling something. The marketplace got so diluted with fake, sort of loud noise brands, that they think if they have a very fast advertisement, or they have a call to action that has a lot of, this will change your life, this will make you better. It's like the old infomercials back in the day. All you have to do is 5 of these movements and all that belly fat will go away overnight. I think people are savvier now and they don't fall for it. So the question is, what are you going to do that's different to everybody else? Because everybody's trying to do the same thing. So the question is, how do you identify who you are? How do you identify your trust factor, and how do you tap into that trust factor with an audience? And then it's a time game. You have to allow time to pass by. It's like you can't plant in winter, you have to plant in spring. So you have to be aware and cognizant of the rules of physics and nature, and the way that constrains initially the way you can succeed or fail at something, if that makes sense.
So everybody's obviously coming from a fundamentally different start point. I mean, for you, it was the studies, it was the kind of the commercial side of things. What was the trigger for you? Because I'm quite fascinated in terms of this pivoting, because it was a pivot, I think, to the best sort of use of the word, the pivot into acting. Because I guess if somebody is, maybe they've gone down an academic route, or maybe they've gone down an artistic route, and then they feel, oh, well, if I've got to follow Daniel's route, I've got to kind of almost turn through 180 degrees and do something completely different to help myself uncover what this personal brand is going to be. Did it have to be something so fundamental as a complete pivot, or do you see it potentially as an evolution? Because for you, it was quite dramatic, wasn't it?
Very true. It's an evolution that begins, and the evolution gives you the tools for when that meteor strikes, and the dinosaurs become extinct, and everything has to adapt and change overnight, and you're forced to say, well, I have to now change directions. You then have the skill set and the experience to find a way to take all of that from the past, metabolize it, and have it remanifested as your new present moment. Because I the way I stopped acting, I'd reached a point for a while where it was no longer making me intrinsically happy. Would I have left on my own volition? Probably not, because the money's so good, and you have a family, and nobody wants to, when they've got 2 young teenage boys and financial commitments, want to say all of a sudden, let's just change directions. So the question always comes about, why do these changes come about? What's the thing that makes you leave this path and go to this path? And as you say, generally it's some form of sudden shift. The hardest thing to do is come to terms with that sudden shift as to why it did come about. Because you can sit there and read every self-help book there is. And I've read them all back in the day. Because you're an actor, you're a seeker. You want to understand things. What's the journey I'm on? How do I matter? How do I slot into all this sort of stuff? And everyone who's young and in their 20s is philosophically whimsical. So it's how do I fit into this, and what's my role? So I think what happens eventually is you read all the books, you have the mindset, but then when it takes place, you still have to understand that all that stuff you read and all that stuff you believed in, now it's time for action. It's like a soldier. He's learned how to shoot, run, duck, and cover, and then he gets into battle and the bullets are whizzing by. And it's like, okay, now it's time to take all of that stuff I learned and apply it, because this is now my reality. So I think I got to a place where I knew that I wanted more control in my life. Acting it's a wonderful experience, but you're very much a puppet. You're told what to wear, what to say, where to be. You're even fed the food they give you. And when all things are said and done, you start to find that there's a part of you that you're not really tapping into, because it's not required to be tapped into, because you're very much an exogenous shell, and the endogenous part of you is there, and you can apply that through the craft, but it's not really who you are. This is more or less who you are. So I chose this journey where I am now because I wanted that control. I wanted the experience. I wanted to take all those experiences and see fundamentally if I could apply them in a way that would allow me to progress to this next stage of my life. So it's a scary place, but as long as you trust in the fact that everything I truly believe this, having lived the life I've lived, and everything happens when it's meant to happen. And merely until that moment takes place, you're just acquiring knowledge, applying the knowledge you've acquired. And then if you can be self-analytical and step back and say, is what I'm doing serving me in a way that I'm becoming a more experienced human and a better person, then you can continue on that path. So I think personal branding, and it all comes back to personal branding, is that, I spent 15 years doing soap opera. It's all about brand, because your fan base really is your safety net. You build a strong fan base, and therefore it's that brand that keeps you employed. Because within 15 years of anything, there's so much change. You see the way music changes over 15 years. 15 years ago, the same music, no longer anybody really cares. It's all shifted and moved. So how then, if you're a character on a TV show, and you have the option of being there for almost 15 years, how do you keep that current and modern? And that's the way you choose to brand yourself. But at the core of that brand, there's going to be a moral compass and a set of principles that define what the brand is. It's almost like the mission statement of a company. If a company doesn't have a mission statement or a call to action, how does the consumer know that is a brand they should invest their time and their money in? So that's the quickest thing that anyone needs to be able to do. The shortest thing you can do, if you say, I want to get into branding, what is your brand and why are you choosing to focus on that particular aspect of your brand? And that's key. Who are you and why are you doing what you're doing? And then once you get that out of the way, then the rest is just merely technical, because there's patterns you can take, and there's courses of action that will allow that to manifest. But at the core of it, who are you? Why are you doing this? What is the purpose behind the time and effort? And what's the message you're trying to convey to people? And that's I think at the core of all personal brand experiences. That's the foundation of it.
I'm interested to go a little bit deeper into this concept of kind of accountability. I'll use that word because use the word choices there, and I guess and have been over your lifetime very kind of conscious of those choices, those moments where, based on all the factors that have presented themselves and the kind of, do I take path A or path B? And the choice and the accountability has been yours, and you've chosen and you've gone, and I'm very much picking up that you've gone and given it your all. Is it that accountability that kind of makes this work? Because I guess a lot of people could be listening to this thinking, oh, but that's all very well for you, Daniel, because you've succeeded, you're a success, you're well known, etc., etc. But actually, it's come through you taking the responsibility for those choices, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the geography or the landscape of someone's life as a pinball machine, and you're the pinball, the ball is going in a direction, bouncing off and moving around, and geometry plays a large role as to where it goes. But after a while, it becomes extraordinarily random. Like, it bounces here, it goes 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 here. But within the constraints of that, us as people can't allow ourselves to become a pinball in the machine of life, because you have to become accountable. You have to become responsible. You have to be self-analytical, where you say, this is working, this is not working. Okay, this is not working. Why is it not working? And if you don't know, you need to find someone who can explain it to you, whether it be a mentor or someone who's a very honest person. Like, everyone's got honest people in their lives. Most people don't like honesty. They hate it, because honesty is it confronts you with things you don't want to hear. Whether you've written a book, the last thing you want to do is have anybody, after you've written your great novel and it's taken you a year to write it, is read and go, oh, it's just not that good. Or I kind of think it's boring, or I don't like the main character. It's like, no, I don't want to hear what you have to say. But the number one thing you have to do is hear what they have to say. Like Stephen King, exceptionally one of the greatest writers I think that's ever done it. You know, he has a code or a credence which states, after he writes his manuscript, he's done this with every single one he's written. He takes it, puts it in a drawer, doesn't touch it for 6 months, doesn't even look at it again. And then he takes it out and he reads it. So he reads it with a fresh perspective, and he's no longer emotionally connected to it. And then he takes it and gives it to these like 5 or 6 people that he trusts implicitly. And I think it's 5 people, because you want to have an odd number. And it's like, if the majority say it's great, it's good, he continues. If they say it's not, he'll chuck it, or he'll go back and do rewrites on it. So even if at that level of success, you know, you have to be holding yourself to a level of accountability and not emotional. You can't emotionally react to things if you want to be successful. Everyone who's highly emotional ends up failing, because they don't have accountability. They're not pragmatic. They're not objective. They're subjective. And I think objectivity will be always the deciding factor when it comes to success, because what else do you have? Subjectivity is always blinded by something that is not true. So everything has to be accountable. You just have to be accountable with everything you do in life.
I'm interested in your take on this one, Daniel, because obviously, you know, you've got to a point in your life where, yes, you've been well known, you're recognized, there's fame, if you want to sort of use that word here. Right. And for some people, that is a measure of success. For other people, it's financial success. For other people, it's, no, I'm happy. I get up in the morning doing what I love, right. So I'm successful. It does, to have a personal brand, and I'm really curious on how you'd interpret this, to have a personal brand, does that require that you are known, or can anybody have a personal brand irrespective of their definition of success?
That's a really good question. It depends on what the personal brand is going to be focused on. Like, you'll go on Instagram and you'll see these people sitting there and in a chair and talking about, you know, how you sell and how you do this. And a lot of these people, and I've always found it to be kind of funny, and I think most people see it this way, that someone will sell you a course. Here's how you make $1 million in X amount of time doing this. I'm like, if you really had the secret to make $1 million selling real estate or selling futures or whatever, why are you telling us? Why are you allowing the market to get flooded with competitors who are going to compete against what you know how to do and make this money? Why aren't you just doing it? It's like Elon Musk didn't tell people how to make electric cars or how to build rockets. He just went and did it, right? Steve Jobs he would stand there and say, here's what we're doing. We've launched this, we've launched that. But he wouldn't sit there and go, here's why we're doing this. And here's how we do this. And here's how we do that. The product is the branding. So I think the question is, these people who are deciding to sell themselves as the brand, having never really done anything that proves that they can do what they're going to do, that's not, to me, is not a personal brand. A personal brand is someone who has the skill set, has applied the skill set, the proof is in the pudding, and then they choose, because, as you said, there's three things that normally come into play. One is fame, where they want to have some sort of recognition. Nowadays with TikTok, you see a bunch of teenagers on there just doing dances, whatever, because they want to be famous, they want to be seen. That's within our human nature. We want to be noticed. We want to be admired. We want to be respected. Then there is the pursuit of financial gain. And then there's the third one you mentioned, which is the pursuit of happiness. I think life goes like this. The want for fame comes first, because as a young kid, you always wanted your parents' attention. And as you grow up, that will always be there until it disappears over time. And it might take you into your 20s have passed. Then it turns into financial, because you realize without financial, well, what are you going to do? And then ultimately it turns into happiness. So it's a progression of those three things. So, I mean, financial gain and fame can somehow walk along the same parallel, because you may say, I don't want to be famous. I just want to do what I want to do. And all of a sudden you do it so well that you start making money. People want you. You start speaking, you start doing social media, then you become famous, right? But are you happy? So for me, it began as fame, money, leading towards happiness. And I think everyone on their own growth or own journey of personal branding will experience the same thing. The question is, how do you faster than not understand the shifts and changes that happen within you along that journey? Are you happy doing this? If you are, keep doing it. Are you doing it because you're finding that the fame is replacing something you didn't get, and now you feel like it plugs that hole? Okay, how long is that going to last? And as it starts to dissipate, are you able to accept that and then start shifting to the next place? Because if you don't, you're in the past. If you're in the past, there's no growth towards the future. So it's definitely a fame, financial, happiness journey that we all go on.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, the way you're kind of defining that, then I guess the next logical question from there is, how much do you need to be, not you, but how much does one need to be unique in the offer as part of the personal brand? Because obviously we have influencers who, very, very few influencers in the kind of the macro influencer sense are using original content or are coming up with original stuff. They're curators. Right. And is that a good or bad thing? I don't know. The jury's out on that one. But if you're thinking at a kind of a personal branding level, is it a requirement that you have to be different? You have to have different thinking. You have to be almost a thought leader on something that is new and unique, because there's almost like there are only so many subjects that exist. So therefore, it's going to be a bit of a tall ask if we all want to do that unique thing. Is there a place for, yes, being an influencer in the more curatorial, I think that's a word, kind of sense of the word, where, you're drawing together either like-minded people to run a podcast, for example, and you're the podcast host and you're getting everybody else's wisdom and ideas and experience, and you just curate that, and therefore you become known for that? Or is it something that requires you to have a unique spin or take on life, and then that's the value you bring as part of your personal brand? I mean, or is it both?
That's another really good question. I think that I find that answer to be very cut and dry. The tip of the spear in any sphere, okay, is generally the last place you want to be. Because generally, if you're an innovator and you're changing the game, no one wants to know about it. I created a brand in 2021. It was a piece of technology. It was called CPay. It is, and to this day, it still is, the world's first visual payment system. So it was an augmented reality payment system where I would hold my camera up, I would look at you, I'd see through my camera, then above you would appear an avatar on the screen. It's whatever you choose the avatar to be. A picture of your face, it could be whatever it is. I would touch the avatar, and then I could send you money, either using a bank, a credit card, Apple Pay, Google Pay, whatever. Okay. Had never been done. And the website is cpay.co, by the way, if you want to have a look, just to check it out. So I went to investors to raise money. I already raised enough money to build the application and launch it. And we launched it in the cloak of night because I didn't want to put any advertising into it. I didn't want to market it. I didn't want to brand it. I didn't want to do anything to it. I just wanted to put it in the App Store, and I wanted to see what organically happened. We ended up doing $82,000 worth of revenue in transactions in 3 weeks. It organically took off. Anyway, and then we got shut down by the payment gateway that we were using because they couldn't deal with the amount of transactions that they considered to be fraudulent. So the payment gateway shut us down. So I go and meet these investors who are investors. I mean, real investors, not just like your Uncle Johnny who's, puts $50 into the Greyhounds on the weekend and thinks he's got a couple of extra bucks to spend. So I went to this one particular guy who had sold his company for close to $1 billion, an entrepreneur himself. So I'm like, this guy's going to get it. I'm going to show him this product. I'm going to show him the data. I'm going to show him the revenue. And he's going to go, I've never seen anything like this. This is incredible. How do I invest in this? So I'm sitting down with this guy and I pitch it to him. I show him the video. He sees it in real life. I send him some money. And his response to me was, so why is anyone going to use this? And I was like, in a situation like that, the first thing you go to is say, don't speak, don't speak, don't speak. Count to 10, and just kind of just be cool. I said, and then the logic that just kicked in right there and then, as I said to him, in America, we have this thing called Venmo. I don't think you have it in the UK. Venmo is like a payment app, an app for payment. So I can send you money, you can send me money, but there's no visual component to it. I just go on it, I enter, go to Venmo, put in Neil Wilkins, I see you, send you 50 quid, right? So, and Venmo is huge here, it's enormous. So I said to him, so imagine 10 years ago, I said to him, do you have Venmo? Do you use Venmo? He goes, oh, I use it all the time. I said, okay, cool. I said, imagine 10 years ago, I walk in, I sit down from you right now. I said, I've got this app. It's this payment app. And I can look up your name and I can send you money. And it's called Venmo. What would you say to me? You would say to me right now exactly what you said, which is, why would anybody use it? Because they can use a bank ACH transaction. They go with their bank account and they can just send someone wired money, or they can do this, they could do that. I said, based upon your logic, that is what you would say to me, because that's what you just said to me. Because that's the way you're wired. That's the way you function when you get proposed tip of the spear, right? Concepts that haven't been done before. And he stopped, he thought about it. He's like, okay. And then he defaulted, he goes, but going back to CPay, so why would anybody use this when they can use Venmo? What do you say? Do you say, hey, I got to be honest with you, you're a fucking idiot? Do I say that to the guy? No. Do I say, how did you possibly make $1 in life? Because it seems to me you're not an entrepreneur. And I did all the research on this guy, and the quotes, the talks he had done. Oh, being an entrepreneur is like jumping off a cliff and building the plane on the way down. It's like all this stuff that would come out of their mouths about how successful and how difficult it is, and the trials and tribulations, and how you've got to be this and that. I'm like, everything that you've been selling everybody and telling everyone is all bullshit. Because you've got someone sitting in front of you right now that's created a piece of technology that's never been done, never been seen. You've never seen it before. You've never, and it's been launched. It's not even an idea. I raised the money, built it, fully functioning, works flawlessly, and it's made money. And you still don't have the foresight to go, this could change the way that people do financial transactions. So all of that comes back to the question about being a pioneer. It sucks. It sucks. Captain Cook found Australia, ended up getting killed on some island in the Pacific, right? Would it be better to be Captain Cook or be the guy that came 30 years later and just like brought stuff to Australia and then became the governor or the first prime minister of Australia, right? Who wants to be the first? A masochist wants to be the first, right? So you're always going to be up against, you never want to be the first. Because unless you have deep pockets or people that have deep pockets who go, I believe in you, I'm backing you, no matter what happens, we're ride or die. It is a exhausting, heartbreaking, devastatingly exhausting situation to be in. Now, if someone's already launched a CPay and it's successful, then you come along with the next one, someone's going to go, oh, that works. There's another one. Let's invest in this. And you see it in movies all the time. They make a movie about a comet's going to hit the Earth. All of a sudden, one studio's releasing it. The other studio goes, we need a movie about a comet hitting the Earth. And next thing you know, you've got 2 movies coming out within 6 months about a comet hitting the Earth. Which one's going to make more money? The second one or the first one? If that's the case, then going back to the analogy is, if you're the second to market, do you have the capacity to say, okay, what did the first one do wrong? What are they not doing right? How do we do it better? And that's what Apple does. Apple doesn't release anything until they've got it down. And they look at what the opposition's doing. What are they doing? They're doing this, they're doing this, they're doing that. We'll do it better. And then they take as long as they want, they release it. And they've got the money behind them and the brand, the trusting brand, to release it correctly. So you don't want to be the last. You don't want to be the first. I suppose it's kind of like, in Vietnam, you're going through the jungle. Do you want to be on point? Or do you want to be like the fourth guy back? So when the gunfight starts, you're in a different position. So it's difficult. It's difficult to want to try and launch a brand and be the first to do it. It's horrible. But once again, if that's who you are as a human and you're driven and you're inspired by creating change and you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to be first. You want to be the first to the entrepreneurial, finish line. That's what you want. But the question is, you've got to somehow get a thicker skin fast as possible, because you're going to hear the dumbest shit come out of people's mouths. Just stupid shit from people who should know better. They should know better, and they don't. And that to me is like, it's mind-boggling to think, how could you once claim to be an entrepreneur and be in this position now and see something that you've never seen before that's proof of concept done and ask stupid questions based upon mindsets that it doesn't make any sense.
But I guess it was such a learning for you, wasn't it, going through that experience and that frustration at that sort of particular, sort of encounter that you had. I mean, what projects have kind of come more recently? You mentioned a couple at the beginning of the conversation here. What are you working on right now?
So other than the digital marketing company I have where we launch a lot of brands, we've got this company called Disco. Disco is an artificial intelligence matching networking application. And the irony being is that, look, I can now look at CPay in the rearview mirror and say to myself, okay, it allowed me to reach the place I am now with Disco. It's given me the insight and the foresight to understand the roadmap of investors, seeing investors, the way they think, the way they function, and I understand it better. But what Disco does, and this is one thing that I'm very proud of, and we're launching our MVP. It's our second iteration of the app. The first iteration came out as augmented reality. So you could actually look around on your phone and see the people in augmented reality, and you could connect with them that way. We launched that version in 2022. AR kind of came and went. So we pivoted and we moved away from AR. But what the application basically does is it allows you to create a profile, and then you can use up to 100 social tags and 100 work tags to define you. Hashtag username if you want, Neil Wilkins, hashtag podcast, hashtag London, hashtag Manchester United. Then you can do movies you like, hashtag Rolling Stones, whatever. Okay. Then mathematically, when you're walking around, let's say you go to London and you're walking around, when you pass within a radius of people that you choose, say up from half a mile to 10 miles. So let's say you take it down to half a mile. As you walk through London, as you pass other people that mathematically have a compatibility with you. So let's say they have 20 tags, 10 tags, 5 tags, you get notified that you're in the proximity of someone who matches with you. And then the AI conversation will take over and you tell it, have a conversation based upon these tags we have in common. So let's say you go to a convention and you're on the convention floor walking around, you no longer have to go up to the booths and you no longer have to look at someone's name tag. Oh, hi, Neil, I'm Daniel. Nice to meet you. What are you doing? What's this? What's that? I now get to be at the convention and I can go, who are the people here that match with me? Oh, there's Neil Wilkins here. We have 15 things in common. AI chat, da 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 da. Boom. Next thing you know, we get straight to deal flow. Hey, Neil, I'll meet you over at such and such. Let's sit down and have a cup of coffee. We've already got to that place. The other thing that technology allows us to do is we can place a billboard. It's a disco billboard, we call it, where you could be where you are in Bristol and say, I want to attend that convention in the Las Vegas Convention Center. You could place your profile physically at that GPS location, and anyone who's either there in person or dropping in like you have, you'll match. So you no longer have to leave where you are now to match or communicate with people. You can go to 10 conventions a day globally and attend every single one of these conventions and match with people. And the whole purpose of it is how do you filter out the noise and the white noise and those things that are preventing you from getting to deal flow faster. Whether you want to find a date and you want to use it for dating, how do you get through the whole, well, I don't really have that much in common, or we thought we did, but we don't really. How do you get to that faster? And we have about a dozen colleges and universities in the US at the moment that are onboarding this, because what they saw in it when we pitched them was, we have a bunch of kids that move here that have never been to these colleges before. They don't know anybody here. How do we give them a better social experience? Because 35% roughly of all kids now, Gen Zs, have social anxiety disorder. Because following COVID and whatever, and they're on their screens all the time, they don't have the face-to-face skill set that you and I have, that we grew up with. So what it does, it allows a kid, say he wants to go to NYU, he can drop his profile on the campus at NYU. He can also drop his profile on the campus at Stanford or Yale, Harvard, wherever he wants to go, if he can get into, and see what the social side does for him. Meaning he'll go, okay, on Harvard, I've met 30 people who do the same thing as me. 10 of those people I could be best friends with if I met them tomorrow. Stanford, I've only got 5. Yale, I've got 1. Next thing you know, he says, I want to go to Harvard because my life there would be so much more enjoyable during this hard academic life I have to live. And he's got his people that he connects with. So all the misfortune of CPAY and the trials and tribulations of its failure allowed us then to move into a place that I think, from a cosmic or a human point of view, will be more beneficial to the humanity than doing a financial app where I can see you and pay you and give you money or request money. And that to me matters more now. And that's what we talked about. You go from fame to financial success to happiness. And philanthropy, or the philanthropic goal of bringing people together, to me has become a stronger thing for me, because I've seen, I'll go to an appearance and people will come up to me and say, these 5 girls here, we never would have met if it wasn't for your character on Young and the Restless. We never would have met if it wasn't for Young and the Restless. Now we're best friends. We go on trips together and our kids hang out together because they had that commonality. So it was always, how do we take people that are strangers and put them in a position where they say, I don't have to be a stranger anymore, because there are people out there just like me that I never would have met. I never would have had that experience. And what a great life I have now. What great happiness I have because of that. So they're the learning curves you get from failure. But when you have failure, you have to be responsible for saying, I did everything I could. It's outside my control. I pitched it to everyone who could finance it. I built it. I did it. And I was heartbroken. I was crushed for a good year and a half. Couldn't believe it. But I didn't stop. I pivoted to the next project. And I said, how can I take everything I learned from that failure and now apply it to the next project? How can I do that? And that comes down to having a mission statement in what the brand is and why you're doing it. And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Why are you doing what you're doing? What's the root cause that makes you do this? And you don't want to be the tip of the spear. You just want to be somehow a couple of steps back if you can.
That's just such wise, sage advice, I would say. It's just so powerful.
Yeah,
And I guess as well, this is kind of all about, like you say, it's trusting in the why. Because once you
right,
have that, your North Star, your vision, whatever phrase you want to kind of
right.
use, it kind of, that is the fuel, isn't it? That every morning you wake up and you think, okay, I was beaten and battered yesterday, but today I'm still focused on that point and I'm still heading in the right direction. And as you say, that no experience is bad, it's just a learning. And I think that's just such a balanced, is it super positive? Well, kind of, but it's a more balanced view of the world because it's accepting that not everything is going to go right. Not everybody's going to be agreeable. Not everything is going to be a win, but there's always something to be taken to that next step in the journey. And what a life that is that you're crafting, and everybody doing this would be crafting. World needs this, doesn't it?
I think so. I do. I think that, I have a 19-year-old son and a 16-year-old son, and one's in college and one's in high school. And both of them, when they went to high school, changed high schools. They were in different schools and they moved to new schools. And in the US, the way it works, like I'm from Australia, where 7th grade is the beginning of high school, 12th grade is the end of high school. But here in the US, they have grades 6 through 8, which is like, I don't know what they call that. Is that middle school? That's middle school. And then 9 through 12 is high school. So generally one feeds into the other. So everyone who comes into grade 9 in high school already knew everyone 6 through 8. If you turn up at a new school in 9th grade, it's all of a sudden it's like, well, now I've got to try and slot in. I've got to fit in. So there's 2,000 kids in the school, and it's like, well, how do I find those kids that are just like me? Most kids will meet a couple of people. It doesn't click. Next thing you know, they don't have the friends and they'll sit on their own and they'll end up becoming just isolated. Their academics suffer. Their social life suffers. Their moral, not their moral, their emotional wherewithal gets frayed and tattered, and it's not a healthy environment. So, one thing I saw with my kids is, imagine they had a tool like Disco that before they got to that school on their first day, they could drop the billboard at the school, start matching with people, or on their first day, walk onto the campus. Who do I match with? Wow, I have so much in common with that person. And then the question is, and this is why AI is a wonderful thing, because it allowed us to put, and this is another thing. So AI only in the last couple of years has got to the point where it lets us do this. We couldn't have done this 3 years ago, 2 years ago. Now we have the capacity to go, okay, I've matched with that other person. Now I'm going to allow AI to be the icebreaker, because I still don't have the confidence to go and talk to the stranger. I still don't have the confidence to say, even though we have 15 things in common, how do I approach that? So now I allow AI to do that for me. And next thing you know, you whittle away the fear of failure, because everything's fear of failure. You whittle that away and it's gone. And then all of a sudden you have success, you have friendship, and humans are emotional, community-based organisms. So that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to help build emotional, community-based connections through Disco. So I'm extremely excited about it. I think that it's something that there's nothing out there that's doing it, which once again goes back to the tip of the spear thing. Like, do you want to be the first? But this, I have enough confidence, because it's not a financial transaction app. It's a social interaction, social connection, human app. And I think at the root of all of us, whether you want to send money to other people or you want to receive money, that's one thing, but everybody wants to be able to find people just like them. Because why do we have sport? So we can talk. The first thing, people in there have a sport, they'll go, oh my God, did you see the game on the weekend? They have nothing in common, but they'll sit there and talk about every play, who kicked the goal, what happened after that, how long you've been a fan. All of a sudden they go, I like that person, because you have that in common. So imagine adding more things to that when you can throw in, we have these movies in common, this music in common, we went to these schools, all these different things. The goal is to take strangers, because the world is becoming more fragmented and we're becoming more insular. How do we reverse that and then make more meaningful connections within this world that's becoming smaller, but at the same time much bigger? And that to me means a lot. So maybe I'm meant to be where I am right now, which I truly do believe, but maybe I'm meant to be here because everything else in the past that I did had to at some point fail. Otherwise, I would still be there. If the acting thing didn't push me out of it, I'd still be there. If CPA was successful, I wouldn't be where I am right now. So you have to trust. You know, you could say it's God's will. You could say it's the cosmic voice of the universe. But everyone, I think, to some extent, has a path that they're meant to be on. And once you can realize and accept the fact that you are on a path that you have really had no control over, because it's like you're in the flow of a current, but along the same time, you're responsible for staying alive in that current and not drowning. So we have responsibility, but the current is going to take us, I think, along the journey of what is almost ordained to be for us. Is that a survival skill on my side where I think that in order to be able to go to sleep at night and go, I'm not a loser and a failure? Maybe. Is it true? Maybe. I don't know. But I think you have to look at things saying, this is a journey and the journey is taking me here. And all I can do is say, I'm here for a reason. I'm here for a purpose now.
That's so inspiring, I think, for everybody to hear this, that it is a constant, consistent journey, that we can all wake up every morning and know next step, next step, next step. It never goes away until your last breath. You're all on this. Everybody watching, listening to this, you know, Daniel's kind of describing this so eloquently. Daniel, this has been an absolutely brilliant conversation. I know you're a very busy guy, so, you know, I'm going to let you go, but just kind of one final thought, really. You're hopeful for the future, that this is all going to kind of figure it out, and we're all going to kind of be able to use something like disco, and kind of life's going to be good.
I think so, because I have a hope for humanity. I have hope for my children and their children and their children's children, that mankind is going to always be at the core of what mankind is a species that has compassion, has humanity within it, and needs to always default to the idea that we're not lone wolves. We are a community-based organism. And I think giving people a tool set that allows that to be in a world that's ever changing and ever uncertain. You know, I see kids on social media now, and like, you know, when we went to school, we'd leave school, come home, and if you had a shit day at school and you're bullied or just whatever, it just sucked. You could leave, come home, escape it. Now these kids can't even escape it, because they go on their phones and they're constantly being reminded, I'm not as cool as I want to be. Life is not giving me the things I want, and you can't escape it. And I think it breaks you down as a human. So the goal is, how can I help bring people together, like I brought people together in soap opera, and fan bases together, and friendships together? How can I do that? And if I can do that in my life, when I take my last breath, I think it's somewhere along the way, I'll say it added up to something. It meant something.
Daniel Goddard, thank you.
Thank you, Neil. I appreciate it very much. You take care.